and I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank you for organizing this open debate on the working methods of the Security Council, and we also thank all the briefers for their presentations earlier today. Mr. President, there is wide agreement within the world community that to be able to respond effectively to the increasing complex and overlapping challenges to global peace and security, the Security Council must become more transparent, accountable, inclusive, and democratic. We hope that consensus will be reached in the near future through the General Assembly's hygiene process on a comprehensive reform of the Security Council. Meanwhile, it is essential for the Council to improve its working methods. Allow me to make a few observations about Security Council working methods. 1. Much of Council's real work increasingly takes place behind closed doors in so-called informal meetings, which have no records and thus do not assign responsibility or explanation for most of the decisions that are taken or not taken by the Security Council. 2. This was always not so. During the early decades after the creation of the United Nations, the Council meetings were held in an open. They were convened urgently at the request of a member state or visible threats to peace and security, and they were open to active participation by states, not members of the Council, who could intervene freely on the issue of concern to them. This open culture of the Council's work has progressively eroded by the even more frequent closed meetings, especially after the end of the Cold War. In our view, enhanced engagement of the Council with the wider UN membership is critical. We all have an equal stake in the maintenance of international peace and security. The number and proportion of open meetings of the Council must therefore be increased and closed meetings restricted to a minimum. Mr. President, it is no secret that there is widespread dissatisfaction with what is seen as an exclusivist and elitist culture of the Council, with outcomes mostly determined by its permanent members. There is also frustration with the use of the veto, which is exercised in the Council not only through negative votes of the permanent members, but also through the Council's informal and often UN-acknowledged processes. It is this reality which reinforces the belief of Pakistan and the Uniting for Consensus group that the reform and effectiveness of the Security Council cannot be achieved by seating additional permanent members on the Council, but by enhancing its representation, openness, inclusiveness, decision-making through the expansion and empowerment of additional elected non-permanent seats. Mr. President, the Security Council relationship with the General Assembly and the Economic and Social Council should also be brought into conformity with the letter and spirit of the UN Charter. The improved timeline in the submission of the Security Council report to the General Assembly is encouraging, but the same cannot be said about the contents of the report itself. The report provides a compendium of the Council's deliberations of the various issues, which is a useful reference, but it does not throw any light on how the Council considered specific situations and the ways by which it reached its decisions. There is even greater disregard of the Security Council's Charter relationship with the Economic and Social Council. Article 65 of the Charter provides that the Economic and Social Council, and I quote, may furnish information to the Security Council and shall assist the Security Council upon its request, unquote. But rarely has the ECOSOC been requested to play this role, nor has there been any serious effort made apart from creating peace-building commission to evolve a practice of inviting ECOSOC to work with the Security Council in areas and on issues where their mandates overlap. Mr. President, it is also increasingly evident that fundamental changes are needed in the global counterterrorism architecture and the UN Security Council sanctions regime, especially to ensure A, due process and effective remedy in the implementation of sanctions regimes, B, strengthening of the Office of the Ombudsman to the Daesh and Al-Qaeda Sanctions Committee towards enhancing the transparency in the UN Security Council sanctions. And 3, halting and reversing the wrong practice of transforming soft law standards and practices into arbitrary obligation on all states through the Security Council. Mr. President, finally, nothing undermines the credibility of this Council more than the selective implementation and non-implementation of its resolutions. The Council should seriously consider how it can improve the implementation of its resolutions, especially on long-standing issues such as the Jammu and Kashmir dispute and the question of Palestine. Failure to enforce its own resolution undermines the credibility of the Security Council and erodes the commitments of states and peoples to the principles of the UN Charter and the passive settlement of disputes. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Pakistan, and I give